This story was sent to us by Mrs. Hannah a school counselor who quit her job just a week after this happened. Call to action. If something unexplainable has ever happened to you, share your story with us. Email is in the video description and the channel's About section. Story: My name is Hannah, and I used to work as a school counselor at a private school in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago. I say used to because after what I experienced last year, I never stepped into that building again. It was a regular Thursday afternoon. Most of the students had already left, and I was staying back to finish some behavioral reports for the principal. I had to file them in the old archive room located in the school basement, a place very few people ever visited. The basement had a strange reputation among the kids. Some said it used to be part of an old house that once stood before the school was built. Others whispered that it was haunted. I never paid much attention to ghost stories until that day. The staircase to the basement was narrow, dimly lit, and smelled like rust and damp stone. As I went down, the air got colder. A flickering tube light above the archive room barely lit the hallway. The door creaked open with a sound that echoed far too long. The room was cramped, full of iron shelves, dusty folders, and student files dating back decades. I placed the reports on a shelf and was about to leave when I heard a faint knock. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Knock, knock. I froze. It came from the far end of the room, behind a locked storage door that hadn't been opened in years. I waited, thinking it might just be old pipes or settling wood. Then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. A chill ran down my back. I turned toward the door. It was silent now. I tried to walk away, but something in me, curiosity, fear, I'm not sure, kept me there. I moved closer. That's when the light above me flickered once and died. Darkness swallowed the room. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, and that's when I saw them. Faint handprints on the inside of the glass panel on the locked door. Small handprints, like a child's. I stumbled backward. My heart was racing. The handprints began to multiply, smearing down the glass, as if someone inside was clawing their way out. Then I heard it, a child's voice, whispering, "Help me, please." It was soft, weak, like they were crying. I wanted to run. I should have run, but my body froze. I watched helpless as the storage room door handle began to turn. On its own. Click. The door creaked open just an inch. Cold air rushed out, and behind it, nothing, just shadows. I stepped back slowly. That's when I saw something in my phone's light. A face, pale, wide-eyed, peeking from the corner behind the shelves. Then it was gone. I dropped my phone. When I picked it up, I noticed something written on the floor, right in front of the storage door. It looked like it was scrawled in thick, dark red chalk. She never left. That was enough. I ran. I didn't even bother shutting the door behind me. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard footsteps behind me, light, fast, like a child running. I slammed the basement door shut and locked it. The next day, I told the principal. He didn't look surprised. "That basement," he said quietly. "There have been stories. We don't use that room anymore. Not since what happened to Zoe." I blinked. "Who's Zoe?" He paused, then handed me an old newspaper clipping from 2006. A young girl named Zoe went missing during school hours. They never found her. The last place she was seen? The basement. I still don't know what I saw that day, but every night since, I hear her voice in my dreams, pleading for help. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I can still smell it, the rust, the mold, and I know she's close. Ohm's stories don't just hide in silence. They sink into your mind over time. This is the story of a night that changed my life forever. A night when I saw something in a schoolroom that words can barely describe. Credit. This story was sent to us by John D., a school teacher who never went near that room again after this incident. Call to action. If you've ever experienced something eerie or unexplainable, send us your story. Our email address is in the video description and the channel's about section. Story begins. My name is John, and I work as a science teacher in a government school. This incident happened about a year ago, but every detail that night is still etched in my memory as if I'm reliving those moments again and again. That day, I stayed back later than usual. We had an important science project exhibition the next morning, and I needed to finish setting up the models in room number 9. The rest of the school was deserted. Every classroom had emptied, and a strange silence had taken over the entire building. Room number 9 was the oldest classroom in the school. Its walls were stained with dampness. An old ceiling fan hung from above, making a faint creaking sound, and the dust-covered curtains barely moved in the still air. The whole room felt like a forgotten memory frozen in time. No one liked coming here. In fact, many of the students were afraid of it. They believed something lived in there, something that watched us. At first, I dismissed it all as mere rumors. But that night changed everything. I unlocked the rusted door and stepped inside. The air was musty, and the scent of mold hit me like a wave. I walked to the front of the room, turned on the dim yellow lights. Half of them flickered as if protesting, and began assembling the models. For a while, everything seemed normal. Then I heard the sound. It wasn't loud. It was more like a shuffle, like someone dragging their feet slowly across the floor. I paused and looked around. Nothing. The windows were shut, and I was sure I was alone. I returned to my work, thinking maybe it was just the old building settling. But then it happened again, this time louder, clearer, closer. I turned toward the back of the room. The old supply closet stood there, its door slightly ajar. I didn't remember it being open. My heart began to race. I forced myself to walk over, step by step, each one heavier than the last. As I reached the closet, I slowly pushed the door open. Nothing, just old lab equipment, broken chairs, and dusty files. I let out a shaky breath and chuckled nervously. "Get a grip, John," I whispered, but then the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped back, my chest tightening. There was no wind, no one else. I turned quickly, yanked the door open. Empty hallway. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I grabbed my things and decided to leave the room. As I reached the door, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Written on the chalkboard, where I hadn't written anything, were the words, "You shouldn't be here." I froze. My legs wouldn't move. I stared at the message, my mind trying to rationalize it. Had someone played a prank? But no one else was there. I had the only key. The door had been locked. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. The writing was still there, but now the chalk was slowly rising off the tray, floating in midair. It scribbled another message right in front of me. "Leave. Now." My instincts took over. I turned, flung the door open, and ran out into the hallway. As I sprinted down the corridor, the lights above flickered violently. A strange humming echoed through the walls, followed by a sound like distant whispering, layered voices, speaking words I couldn't understand. I didn't stop until I was outside the building, standing in the parking lot. Gasping for air, I looked back at the windows of room number 9. One curtain shifted just slightly, and a shadow moved behind it. A human-like figure, watching, but the school was empty. It was supposed to be empty. The next morning, I reported everything to the principal. He looked at me quietly and said, "You're not the first, Mr. John." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He sighed and opened an old file from his drawer. It contained multiple reports, teachers, students, even a janitor, who had all experienced similar things in room number 9. The room had been sealed multiple times in the past, but it always ended up being used again. "It's like it calls people," the principal said. "We don't know what it is, but once you've seen it, it stays with you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the whispers, seeing the chalk floating, feeling the weight of those unseen eyes. And I realized something terrifying. I had brought something back with me. Sleep had become a stranger to me. Every night since that incident, I would wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, my ears echoing with distant whispers. Shadows danced across my walls without a source, and every time I closed my eyes, I was back in room number 9, alone, yet watched. I decided I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to find answers. I returned to school during the weekend when the building was empty. The gates were locked, but I still had my keys. My hands trembled as I walked down the hallway again. The air inside felt colder, heavier, almost like the building knew I had come back. I made my way to the principal's office. He had reluctantly agreed to let me access the archives after I told him I needed closure. Buried in the old records, I found the earliest reference to room number 9, dated back nearly 70 years. The room was originally a detention cell. During the 1950s, the school wasn't a school at all. It was a correctional facility for juveniles. Room number 9 was where they kept the children who were considered too far gone. One name came up repeatedly: Samuel Reeves, a 13-year-old boy accused of strange and violent behavior. According to the files, Samuel was obsessed with science, especially chemistry. But something went wrong. One night, a fire broke out. Samuel was trapped inside room number 9. They never recovered his body. Some say the fire wasn't an accident, and others said Samuel had done something in that room, something forbidden. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to room number 9. The door creaked open like before. The lights flickered. The air had the same rotting smell. But this time, I came prepared, with a voice recorder and an EMF detector I borrowed from a friend who was into paranormal research. I sat in the same place, front of the blackboard. Samuel, I said aloud, if you're still here, I just want to understand. Why me? At first, there was silence. Then, the room grew colder. The EMF reader spiked. The voice recorder picked up static. Then a faint child's voice. You saw me. I froze. The chalk lifted again. You didn't run. They always run. Who are you? I asked. I'm still here because I never left. They burned me, locked me away. I waited. Waited for what? Someone who wouldn't run. Someone who would listen. My breath caught. What do you want from me? Finish it. The floor beneath me trembled. The old closet creaked open on its own. Inside, a hidden panel in the back wall swung open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. I didn't want to go, but something compelled me. Step by step, I went down into what looked like a small hidden lab. Dusty shelves, beakers, a burned notebook, and a smell of charred flesh. The notebook had Samuel's name on it. Inside were pages of his writing. Equations, strange symbols, and drawings of figures not human. One page was fresh, like it had just been written. They were afraid of me because I was different. I tried to leave, but they made me part of this place. Set me free. Suddenly, the room shook violently. A loud scream echoed through the staircase. I turned and ran. Back through the closet, out of room number 9. But the door wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The lights burst. Darkness consumed the room, except for one small circle of dim light. And in that light stood a boy. Pale skin, burnt face, lifeless eyes. Samuel. He didn't move, didn't speak. But I heard his voice inside my mind. If you tell them the truth, they'll never believe you. But you can end it. Seal this room. Burn the book. Set me free. The moment I nodded, the lights went out, and I was outside. Just like that. I stood in the empty corridor. The door of room number 9 shut behind me, locked, as if nothing had happened. I burned the notebook that night, and from that moment, the whispers stopped. The shadows faded. My sleep returned, but the room still exists. And every now and then, someone gets curious. Someone hears the whispers. If you're watching this and ever find yourself near room number 9, don't go in, because Samuel might still be waiting. The end. My name is Mr. Carter, and I've been the principal of Ridgewood Academy, a private school on the outskirts of Chicago, for over 20 years. What I'm about to tell you is something I've never shared with anyone, until now. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was terrified of what would happen if I did. It all started the day after Mrs. Hannah A. left. Hannah had been the school counselor for almost as long as I've been principal. Quiet, dedicated, and always ready to help students through their issues. She seemed like one of the last people to be affected by anything unusual. That was until she quit. And she didn't just quit, she fled. She told me she couldn't handle the nightmares anymore. She said something was in the basement, the place that we had long avoided. I didn't believe her at first. After all, I had worked in this school for 2 decades, and nothing had ever happened. I chalked it up to her personal issues and the stress of the job. But then, something happened to me. It was a normal Tuesday morning when I went down to the basement to retrieve some archived paperwork. The basement, despite its history and the rumors about it, was part of the school's original structure, and the archives were stored there. We didn't use that space much, but I had to find some files for a meeting. I walked down the narrow staircase. The cold air hitting me the moment I opened the basement door. The flickering light above the old storage room seemed to flicker more than usual, but I ignored it. I'd been down there hundreds of times. Nothing to be afraid of, right? The moment I stepped into the room, I felt it, the heaviness. It was like the air itself was suffocating me. The small, cramped space was filled with rows of shelves, some bowed under the weight of the dusty, forgotten boxes. I moved to the farthest end, where the oldest files were kept. I felt something watching me. But when I turned around, no one was there. As I reached the file, I heard it, a soft shuffle, almost like someone dragging their feet. I turned sharply, expecting to find one of the custodians or staff members. But the room was empty. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Nothing. I shook my head, convinced it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I grabbed the file and started to walk back toward the stairs when I noticed something. The door to the old storage room was ajar. It wasn't supposed to be. It had been locked for as long as I could remember. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't recall anyone ever entering or leaving that room. I slowly walked toward it, the dim light casting eerie shadows as I approached. The door creaked open with a faint groan, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. I took a step forward, the cold air growing stronger as if the very walls were pushing me back. The floorboards creaked beneath my shoes, and the silence was deafening. And then I saw it. At the far end of the room, in the corner closest to the wall, there was someone, a figure. It was small, hunched over, its back turned to me. I called out again, my voice quivering. "Is someone in there?" No answer. I could see it more clearly now. The figure was wearing a faded, old-fashioned dress. The edges of its clothing were frayed and torn, as though it had been worn for years. Its hair, long and tangled, hung over its shoulders, almost obscuring its face. Before I could move, the figure turned, slowly. Its eyes were hollow, dark circles that seemed to pull me in like black voids. Its face was pale, almost translucent, and its lips moved, but no sound came out. A sudden chill ran through me, and the air grew so cold I could see my breath in front of me. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. As I turned to run, the door slammed shut behind me. I felt trapped. I grabbed the door handle and yanked it, but it wouldn't budge. Then I heard the whisper, "Leave before it's too late." I froze, my blood turning to ice. The voice was soft, childlike, but filled with an overwhelming sense of urgency. I finally managed to get the door open, and I bolted out of that basement faster than I ever thought possible. The next day, I told the board about what happened. They didn't seem surprised. There have been stories about that basement for years. The head of the board told me, "We don't use that part of the building anymore." After what happened to Zoe, I blinked, confusion creeping into my voice. "Who's Zoe?" He sighed, looking down at an old, yellowed newspaper clipping. It was dated back to 2006, and it featured a photograph of a young girl named Zoe, a student who went missing during school hours. The last place anyone saw her? The basement. I still don't know what I saw that day or what happened to Zoe, but I know one thing for certain. Whatever it is that haunts that basement, it's not something that will ever be forgotten